What is up, Nickel City Mafia? Welcome to a special video I'm putting out talking about this middle linebacker situation, one that is a head scratcher for me. I got to tell you, the Bills are a Super Bowl contending team. You all know this. But for them to have struggled to fill the void left by Tremaine Edmonds, don't get me wrong, it's not like you can go find a Tremaine Edmonds. They're not a dime a dozen. He was an athletic specimen. He still is. He's just not on our team. But what I'd like you to do during this video, at the end of this video, when you've heard all the information I'm about to present, I'd like you to leave a comment and tell me whether you think it was just bad luck. Did they actually draft the right guy? Did they have the right guy on their roster already, but things just haven't panned out? Do you think it was bad player evaluation, not only for the draft, the people that we've taken to potentially replace Edmonds, or bad player evaluation of who they thought they had that's already on their squad? Or did Beane and McDermott always have something up their sleeve that maybe is about to be unleashed on Monday Night Football? By the way, Monday Night Football, 9 days away from the time I'm doing this video. We are just 5 days away from the NFL kicking off. Detroit taking on Kansas City. Can't wait to see a young guy, Jack Campbell, middle linebacker, who was drafted this year in the first round by Detroit. He's going to be starting, so we'll get to see him on Thursday Night Football. That should be interesting because we're talking about middle linebackers. He was somebody I had hoped that maybe the Bills would have a shot and would take him, but he got taken super early, much earlier than many folks expected him to go. So let's start at the beginning. In 2018, in the first round, the second pick that they had in the first round, you all remember who the first pick was? Josh Allen. But with the 16th overall pick, the Buffalo Bills took Tremaine Edmonds, 6'5", 250 pounds, 4.54 40. Just an athletic wonder, a physical specimen you just don't see every day. And Edmonds had a good career with the Bills. I mean, there are a lot of people who felt that he didn't live up to his potential or they didn't see enough from him. But, there are other folks that said he played very well and he played how the Bills want him to play in that scheme. And we're going to find out in the next year or two if it was the scheme, because he's going to the Bears and we know the Bears are going to utilize him differently. So keep an eye on that young man. But 2022 comes around and it's Tremaine Edmonds' contract year. And everybody knows, I mean everybody, I'm talking beat writers that cover the Buffalo Bills, I'm talking fans, early in the season, or even before the season starts, the Bills knew that if he had any resemblance of a good season, he was going to get a big payday. Huge payday. And that's exactly what happened. Edmonds had a very good year, and he got a huge contract from Chicago Bears, $72 million, $50 million of that guaranteed. Good for him. Super happy. But the Bills knew well in advance that this was going to happen. So you got to start planning, right? Got to start planning. So what was their plan of action? Enter Terrell Bernard, who the Bills took in the third round of the 2022 draft. He was the 89th overall, 6'1", 225, runs a 4.58 40. There were a lot of accolades for Bernard, including a Sugar Bowl record, tying 20 tackles, 2 sacks against Ole Miss. He became the first defensive player to win the Sugar Bowl MVP honors since 2008. First team All Big 12, Dave Campbell's Texas football best linebacker, and more. Injury-wise, Bernard did miss most of 2020 in college due to a shoulder injury that required surgery. So everything sounds great, right? No, not really. Terrell Bernard was a weak side linebacker in college. Weak side linebacker plays on the opposite side of where the tight end lines up. Weak side linebacker is taking on less blockers. Smaller frame. Again, you're not going to find those Tremaine Edmonds type players. I get it. But concern to me that he wasn't a middle linebacker, didn't play hardly any middle linebacker in college. And based on what profile you read, he was okay in coverage. I'm not so sure what they were thinking there, other than they were going to get a better coverage guy than Tremaine Edmonds. They also drafted Beane Spector in the 7th round of the 2022 draft. He was the 232nd player taken off the board, runs about a 4.640. So in 2022, Bernard saw the field for the Buffalo Bills 111 times. He had a PFF grade of 53.2 in coverage and 75.5 against the run. I mean, it was hard to see him on the field. That's Tremaine Edmonds was obviously your starting linebacker. Edmonds did miss 4 games last year, so there were opportunities. And at no time when he did fill in did I see like any signs like, wow, so excited we have this as our backup to Tremaine. Looking forward to when he gets in there full time. You can't judge him on that. Just very few snaps. Let's see what he does when he gets his opportunity. So in 2023, Bernard was expected to battle for that middle linebacker position. At the start of training camp, it was between Bernard, Dotson, and we'll get into Dotson in a second here. And they even put Beane and Spector in the mix. Beane and Spector was quickly ruled out as a person to contend for that middle linebacker spot, so it was a 2-man battle at that point in time. The other contender for that middle linebacker starting position was Tyrell Dotson. Tyrell Dotson was an undrafted free agent by the Buffalo Bills in 2019. 6 foot, 237, runs around a 4.6. Now, interesting about Dotson, right? So right as free agency is about to start in 2023, it is known that Bobby Wagner and the Rams are parting ways. So Bobby Wagner, one of the greatest middle linebackers for the past 10 years, is going to be available. The media, everywhere you read, oh, this is it. The Bills just got a break here. This is going to be the guy that can fill the void of Tremaine Edmonds. I can't find anywhere where that conversation happened with Bobby Wagner. He got signed for $5.5 million with his former team, the Seattle Seahawks, where, look, he was drafted, won a Super Bowl, has a lot of connections there. He got to play for the Rams for the 1 year. The Rams deal was supposed to be a 2-year deal, but for some reason they decided to part ways. And Bobby Wagner played for the Rams. That was his hometown. But going back to Seattle for $5.5 million, you got to ask yourself, okay, why didn't the Bills have that conversation? And I think they did. But here's the crazy thing to me. Again, right at the start of free agency, the Buffalo Bills signed Terrell Dotson for a 1-year, $2 million guaranteed contract. $1 million of that was a signing bonus. So they're locked in. They're locked in on Dotson. They see something that they feel this undrafted free agent from 2019 who hasn't seen the field in the last 3 years very often is going to be able to fill that void. And I'm asking myself, man, why the rush? You can't tell me there were going to be teams jumping to grab Dotson if you didn't sign him immediately. Why not test the market? Why not take that $2 million and potentially use it for one of the other big free agent linebackers that were out there? There were 3. And then there were some that were in the ballpark of what they paid for Dotson. But talking about those 3. So Bobby Wagner, $5.5 million. I already said that. Take that $2 million. Maybe throw in another 5. Does $7 million sway Bobby Wagner to come to the Buffalo Bills? I don't know. And again, it could just be a situation that Bobby Wagner said, no, I'm ready to go back and end my career in Seattle. Levante David was available from the Buccaneers. Another very good linebacker. Won a Super Bowl with them. He re-signs with the Bucs for $4.5 million. Now, it is known that the Bills did reach out and talk to him. But at that point, he had pretty much said he had made the decision to sign with the Buccaneers. So they kind of called a little too late. He did joke. I don't know if he joked, but he did say, hey, if Von Miller had called, it would have been a different conversation. And maybe that just means we have Von Miller call everyone we want to potentially sign in free agency. So Lavonte David, again, another person drafted with the Bucs, probably wants to stay there, doesn't want to uproot his family. $4.5 million. But you got to wonder, if you threw $7 million at him, would that sway him? Both Bobby Wagner and Lavonte David are at the point in their careers where they want to be with someone who has a shot at winning the Super Bowl. And the Buffalo Bills, who else better? So again, you have to wonder about that one. Eric Kendricks was the guy I think they had the best shot at getting. Linebacker from Minnesota, fantastic linebacker. He is signed by the Chargers for $6.5 million per year, 2-year deal with the Chargers, 6.6 each year. Take that $2 million, take that money you threw at Deontay Hardy, and you are pretty close to having the money you're going to need to sign an Eric Kendrick. Let me just say this. If the Buffalo Bills were to sign Kendrick, Bobby Wagner, Lavonte David, set it and forget it. Yeah, I'm going to sound like an infomercial, but set it and forget it. Really. You don't have to worry anymore about that middle linebacker position. And all three of these guys are game changers. They can make plays that change a game, that turn a game around, or when you need a big stop, a big play. These are guys you can count on. There are other free agent linebackers that are available outside those top three that I already talked about. You had Denzel Perryman, although he's injury prone. He signs a $2.6 million deal with Houston. You had Corey Littleton, comes over from Carolina. He signs with the Texans for $2.4 million. And Zach Cunningham, he was a guy that I actually liked and would have liked the Bills to have talked to him. Maybe they did. But he comes over from Tennessee and signs a $1.77 million contract with the Eagles. So even if you don't land one of those top three, why not go after one of these other ones that I mentioned? You have to spend roughly $2 to $2.5 million more. And now you have another person that can come in and compete for that middle linebacker spot and have more depth there. And then finalize the guy that you want to have starting day one, someone you feel comfortable with. Bills don't make any of those moves. None of them. So after you pass up all those free agents that I just talked about, the Bills still, in my opinion, feeling like they're not so sure of that middle linebacker spot. They draft a middle linebacker in 2023 in the 3rd round, 92nd overall, Dorian Williams. Actually played middle linebacker for Tulane. However, it's announced early in camp that he's not going to be competing for that spot. They don't want to turn it over to him, too much pressure to put on him, and to be that Mike linebacker. A little disappointing for many of us. My co-host Jake really thought he should be the person at that middle linebacker spot. Still thinks he will be at some point during the season. We shall see. But it's crazy to think that they didn't even give him a shot in preseason. The 3rd preseason game when they were resting most people, why not put him at that middle linebacker spot? Why not see what he does? They played Dotson for quite a bit. Put Dorian in there. Now, Dorian is going to be the backup for Matt Milano, which, of course, is important. And what better person to learn behind than Matt Milano? But you got to wonder why they didn't even let him have a shot. Actually played middle linebacker. So Dotson's their guy. For some reason, they're locked in on Dotson. They don't even make a move in free agency. They've got Bernard, who they drafted in 2022. So they feel like he's going to compete for a spot. And unfortunately, we don't see Terrell play through the preseason at all. He hurts his hamstring in training camp and didn't see the field at all in any of the preseason games. So now you're stuck with Dotson. However, Bills get lucky. After all teams submit their 53-man rosters, released by the Texans is Christian Kirksey, drafted in the 3rd round of the 2014 draft, 71st overall, 6'2", 235 pounds, runs a 4.6. Played a full season for the Texans last year, was a tackling machine. Now, it was his first full season since 2017 when he played for the Browns, who he was drafted by. Played for the Browns for 6 seasons, played for Green Bay for 1, then 2 years with Houston. He had 124 combined tackles, 2 interceptions, 3 sacks, 7 tackles for a loss, and 7 quarterback hits. If you look at his film, I mean, my goodness, he may be the answer. He may be the answer. And Kirksey was a guy the Bills had looked at prior. When they thought they might lose Matt Milano, they looked at Kirksey at that time as well. The Buffalo Bills quickly signed him to their practice squad for a little over $360,000. What a steal. What an absolute steal. With that said, you can breathe a little bit now because he not only has all that experience, he's played middle linebacker. He's comfortable with calling the plays. All he's got to do now is learn the Buffalo Bills scheme. That shouldn't take long. With all his years of playing for 3 different teams, shouldn't take long at all. So what do you folks think? What's that hook look like? So day 1, Monday Night Football. Do the Bills shock us all and start somebody like Christian Kirksey? They could elevate him from the practice squad at any time. And they're allowed to do that up to 3 times. The 3rd time, they have to sign him to the 53-man roster. Do they not elevate him and they roll with Dotson, which is probably going to be the case? Bernard should be ready and healthy to go. So Dotson starts. Things look rough. You throw in Bernard. And then if things look rough from there, you pretty much have to go. You have to roll with those 2 guys. Those are going to be your starters for week 1, most likely, unless the Bills just completely shock us, like I said, with Christian Kirksey, because they felt like or they feel like he picks up the defense quickly and we're ready to roll with him. I don't think that's going to be the case. But anyhow, let's say week 1 rolls around and hopefully we get the win, but Dotson almost cost us the game where Dotson's just not doing what we expect. And again, I go back to Beane and McDermott have something up their sleeve. Are we going to see a different version of Dotson than we saw in the preseason? But if he does play badly, is Bernard that guy next week? Well, do we see Bernard in the first game? Maybe. If it's going so bad, maybe it's a situational thing. So in my opinion, it's Dotson. If Dotson gets hurt or something drastic has to change, maybe Bernard. But now come week 2. And Kirksey's had plenty of time now to learn the scheme. It really depends on what happens in week 1. I don't know if the Bills are just going to say, all right, Dotson, you're on the bench. Kirksey gets to start. It's really going to be based on Dotson's performance. And then does Bernard get that shot next? If week 2 comes around and we weren't happy with Dotson's performance in week 1, do they go skip over Bernard, or do we finally get to see him have his shot? I think the Bills will let him get his shot first before Kirksey. I don't know, but what you guys think? So take a breath of fresh air. But when I look at all these things that happen, from the fact that they gave Dotson $2 million right at the start of free agency, didn't sign any of the big 3 names that were available in free agency, didn't sign any of the other folks that were around the same price, they had to have felt that they had their guy. So I'll ask you one more time for your comments, for your thoughts. Was it just misfortune for Beane and McDermott? Did they think they drafted the right replacement for Tremaine? Was it poor player evaluation? Not only for who they drafted, but who they thought they had on their team that was going to take that role? Or do they have something up their sleeve? Do they have some magic? Are we going to see a version of Dotson that we haven't seen in the preseason? Again, supposedly, McDermott's going to change things up on this defense. They're not going to show their hand in preseason. We didn't see anything that looked any different from prior years on that defense. But we're supposed to. So against the Jets, who knows what will happen. But I'd love to hear from you folks in the channel, in the comments, and let me know your thoughts on this whole situation, because it's a head scratcher for sure. So many opportunities. I felt there's so many opportunities to get a guy that you can just, like I said, set it, forget it. My infomercial, you get one of those big studs at middle linebacker in free agency, and you don't have to worry about it. And those are guys that can be game changers, especially when the Bills are in their Super Bowl window. Anyhow, If you're new to the channel, please like, comment, and drop a nickel on that subscribe button for us. You'll see us live tomorrow night on the Sunday Night Bills Talk. Till I see you next time, go Bills.